Okay, we're gonna go over an analogy explaining functions and we're gonna show you how to utilize it. So, what is a function? Why would I need to use it? What does it do? Those are the things going through your head when you see this. And let me give you an analogy that's very similar to functions, and I'll give you a real world example. So, imagine you have a factory. What does a factory do? A factory automates a process so you can put things in it and then get a result after. So you won't have to do everything by hand over and over and over again. You'll just hand it to the machine, it'll process it, and give you back a new product. So imagine, let's say, you can say anything for this. It could be like you, you get plastic, put it in a machine, and make bottles. That's what functions are like. They intake values. You can do whatever you want with it, and then it'll output it and spit it back out. And the beauty with it is you can keep using that function over and over again. Like a machine, you can keep using it over and over again to make products. Like a function, you can keep using it over and over again, which can save a lot of space in your code. Now, I'm going to show you what each of these does. So first, you probably recognize this. You have my number 1 equals 1, and my number 2 equals 2. So a variable that's equal to 1, and a variable that's equal to 2. And then we do def, which is short for define. Define my operation. This is the name of the function. And after that, we have two inputs. So you know how in the machine, you put plastic inside of it? It's similar to that. These are the things you're going to put inside of your function. And then what we're going to do is the return gives you back or returns the values to you. So, for example, you have input 1 and input 2, and you're adding them together, and it's giving you back. So, what this does is it intakes values, it adds them together, and gives it back to you to use. Almost like if you had a machine, you give it plastic, it does something with it, makes bottles out of it, and it gives it back to you. So, those two things, the real world and the code, are very, very similar in function. So, you might be confused because you're going to see this line, which print we should know about, and then we put the name of the function, so we tell the code to use it, and then we put inside of the brackets this here my number 1 and my number 2. What's happening here? So what's happening is my number 1 is becoming input 1, and my number 2 is becoming input 2. In other words, input 1 will just be another name for my number 1, and input 2 will just be another name for my number 2. So if my number 1 is equal to 1, and input 1 is just another name for my number 1, then input 1 will equal 1. So input 1 is just another name for my number 1. They both have the same value. Just like if we just did print my number 1 plus my number 2 is the exact same thing as doing input 1 plus input 2. It's the same thing as doing my number 1 and my number 2. And what happens is you add them together and you return it. So essentially, this return part makes this thing become input 1 plus input 2, which is 3, because 1 plus 2 is 3. So it gives you the value input 1 plus input 2, and it replaces this line with this. So if we run this, we should get the value 3. I hope that made sense, but that is my explanation of functions and how it works. You input variables, which just become another name for the variable you put in, and you do something with it, return the value back, and you can do whatever you want. You can print with it, you can add more numbers to it. It's up to you what you want to do with